Do you know what I mean when I say it was a very American event?
It was quite spellbinding, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That you couldn't sort of look away. It was a cross between, I guess, its intention was funeral, memorial, and then it sort of segued into what felt like activism and campaign. And partly the venue itself spoke to that. It was a stadium. One count I saw said 60,000 people, another said 100,000, but it was packed out with people who had come to show their support for Turning Point USA. This is the body, the movement that Charlie Kirk had started. And at the centre of it was Charlie Kirk's widow. Now, God knows how she managed to get up onto that stage and say what she did, but at the heart of her words was a central message of forgiveness. So in that respect, it went right to a sort of Christian tenor tone, of sort of, Christian thinking.
I felt a rather impressive way when she said it. When she said she forgave the man who killed her husband, her face contorted as she said it, because I judge that to be she's doing it, she's saying it, but she's struggling to say it.
This is so raw.
Yeah.
Any memorial normally would have the distance of weeks, if not months, away from the event. This is 10 days.
Yeah.
It's nothing.
Yeah.
She's a rawly grieving widow who managed to talk about Christian forgiveness. So maybe we should kick off just by listening to her words.
My husband, Charlie, he wanted to save young men just like the one who took his life. That man, that young man, I forgive him. The answer to hate is not hate. The answer we know from the gospel is love, and always love. Love for our enemies, and love for those who persecute us.
So there is this almost sort of Christ-like invocation of, loving your enemies, loving those who stand up against you, which was then put into stark contrast by the president himself, the leader of the free world, who got up and said in, I don't know if it was a slightly jokey manner, but it was a very angry manner. It was a quite vitriolic manner. I hate my opponents. And that seemed to be his message to the event as he stood there, wrapping it up at the end.
In that private moment on his dying day, we find everything we need to know about who Charlie Kirk truly was. He was a missionary with a noble spirit and a great, great purpose. He did not hate his opponents. He wanted the best for them. That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent, and I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry. I am sorry, Erika. But now Erika can talk to me and the whole group, and maybe they can convince me that that's not right, but I can't stand my opponent.
Is Erika Kirk the softening agent we've been waiting for? I don't know.
Extraordinary, though, because, not only does he directly contradict the widow, at her husband's memorial by making it about hate rather than salvation or love.
In which she has also said, we didn't see riots, we didn't see violence, we didn't see killing, we saw revival, we saw peace.
Completely.
And then he just ruined it.
And what does he say? He says he wants to send the federal forces to police cities. He wants to put the Department of Justice onto his political enemies. In other words, it becomes intensely political, intensely quickly. And in a way, he has commandeered it entirely into something that he wanted it to be, which was a rally activism against the left. But there is also one other speech that we're going to play you, because, this is kind of extraordinary in its own right. It comes from Tucker Carlson, another man who actually fell foul of Donald Trump a couple of years ago, another big influencer on the right in MAGA land, who is talking about his favourite biblical parable. Take that perhaps with a pinch of salt.
So it's about 2,000 years ago in Jerusalem, and Jesus shows up and he starts talking about the people in power, and he starts doing the worst thing that you can do, which is telling the truth about people, and they hate it, and they just go bonkers. They hate it, and they become obsessed with making him stop. This guy's got to stop talking. We've got to shut this guy up. And I can just sort of picture the scene in a lamplit room with a bunch of guys sitting around eating hummus, thinking about what do we do about this guy telling the truth about us? We must make him stop talking. And there's always one guy with the bright idea, and I could just hear him say, I've got an idea, why don't we just kill him? That'll shut him up. That'll fix the problem.
Wow.
Well,
right.
put that into context for people who might not hear what you and I are perhaps hearing in it.
Okay, so there were a couple of things that were slightly alarm bell ringing. Who does he mean by hummus eaters, right? Is that a nod to whether the Jews killed Jesus Christ? I mean, that's certainly what a lot of the comments, online are suggesting. Was it anti-Semitic? And this idea that Charlie Kirk is essentially the new Jesus. The new Jesus, he's been born again, he's been martyred again, and that by trying to shut him up, you have just made him stronger. And I do think, Sheila, this goes to the heart of what we're seeing now, which is this extraordinary Christian nationalist revival that has married into the MAGA political movement. In other words, when Trump first came down that escalator 10 years ago, and everyone said, I'm not sure how he's going to bring the evangelical right on side. Look at him. He's had 3 wives and he loves his gold escalators.
He's done it.
Well, somehow he has married up, through what he's done to the Supreme Court, to what he's now, the language he's talking. He does not use particularly Christian language, but he has married up both those sides of the MAGA movement.
And I saw an American bishop called Bishop Robert Barron on Twitter, on Instagram yesterday, this morning I saw it, sorry. And he was saying, he's a very big online skill communicator, was at the event, but a Roman Catholic bishop in America. And he was saying in really positive terms, I don't think I've ever heard the word Christ or Jesus Christ said so often by people in government. This is a brilliant thing. This is a brilliant day. Long may it continue. And I was watching that both as a journalist, a Roman Catholic, and someone who just watched the event. And I was thinking, and a Brit, we don't do our politics like that.
We don't do God.
We don't do God like that at all, actually. And I just thought, oh God, this is really making my stomach turn. And I wonder whether that chasm between the British view of what we saw and heard and the partial American view of what was is just vast. It is vast, because I didn't understand any of that I saw.
Look, I think, Christianity is being commandeered in that language into a political movement. There is no question about it. And while Donald Trump doesn't necessarily, do the Christian verses very well, JD Vance does. He grew up with that. He knows his Bible. He knows how to sort of speak in the language of Christian.
And Charlie Kirk was instrumental, really, in getting JD Vance and Trump talking to each other, wasn't it?
Absolutely. So Charlie Kirk was a big early backer of JD Vance. And I don't know whether this is all about smoothing a sort of succession path in. But certainly, you have to say, OK, if 100,000 people were there, that is quite a movement and quite a memorial for Charlie Kirk. But leaving that almost to one side, you have to think of it as the next sort of step of the political message, I think, for MAGA. Yeah,
I think it was clear, wasn't it, that that's what it was. Just a thought on freedom of speech as well before you go, because not just Donald Trump, but certainly Donald Trump in his speech talked about freedom of speech and how American it was and how vital it was and how central it was to their fight constantly, completely blind to the fact that they were so busy contravening freedom of speech themselves that very week.
It's getting quite difficult, isn't it, that one? I mean, the cancellation or the silencing or the putting off air of Jimmy Kimmel, whatever you want to say, I think has become increasingly difficult for many Republicans, for many on the right to square. I mean, who would have thought the big voice, the critic of the weekend, would have been none other than Ted Cruz, the Texas senator who was telling Donald Trump that he had got it wrong, his own commissioner.
Risky strategy.
I mean, an extraordinary place to be when the one voice of reason, is Ted Cruz, not much liked, in wider circles, certainly not particularly by Trump, but you've suddenly got...
But he's
Tucker
American.
Carlson.
He's a proper American in a way.
He is an American libertarian in the sense that they do genuinely believe. Tucker Carlson, who we just played, genuinely believes in free speech. And Donald Trump, as became very, very clear on his flight home from the UK, doesn't like... It's not about free speech or censorship. It's about anything that criticises him. If he gets hurt, he wants it to stop. And he's talking like a toddler right now. Whereas if he thinks that he's been humiliated or exposed by somebody's speech, then he wants that to stop.
And the Erika Kirk announced, I mean, people knew it already, but she announced as well that she's the new CEO of Turning Point USA. Yeah. And there have been huge numbers of chapters, groups,
and donations
coming in as well. It's going to be interesting to see where she takes that, isn't it? And whether it has the same impact politically that Charlie Kirk caused it to have.
I mean, does she step in directly to Charlie Kirk's shoes? Does she host the podcast? Does she host the meetings? Or is she the figurehead that says, I will continue his work, but invites, friends, speakers, all the rest of it? Interesting enough, the first one after his death was hosted by JD Vance.
That's right.
JD Vance and Stephen Miller, Trump's sort of right-hand man in the White House.
His speech was bonkers, wasn't it?
Well, it was it was quite something, but I think what we asked on the podcast, on the News Agents, about the martyrdom of Charlie Kirk. And we asked about it very, very soon after we heard those speeches coming out of the White House. But it does seem that is the movement now. They want to turn Charlie Kirk into a martyr. Don't pay attention to what he said or to which groups he was going after.
To him ultimately.
Just what happened to him. And as long as you retain that sense that he was shut down for his beliefs, you can turn him into your martyr, whatever that may be.